Ever wonder why, like, around the world, men are more likely to die by suicide than women? It seems like such a simple question.
Right, but it doesn't have a simple answer. There's a lot to unpack there.
That's what we're doing today. A deep dive into global suicide rates by gender.
In the data skies we take our flight. Trends and numbers come to life. Colors and charts, they dance and play. Showing truth in a visual way. In GenderDecoded we uncover truths and stories like no other. In the data waves we find the secret maps of humankind.
It's a tough topic, but a crucial one. We're diving into a global issue that doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And a tragic one.
Globally, men are much more likely to die by suicide than women.
Right.
And today, we're going to try to unpack why that is.
Okay.
We're going deep, deep into this global crisis, trying to see what's going on beneath the surface.
Sounds good.
We've got this data set. It's a snapshot of suicide rates all around the world, broken down by country and by gender.
Okay.
And we really want to understand, what factors are contributing to this big gap between men and women.
Yeah.
And what can we do about it? What can we do to maybe close that gap, make things a little better?
Yeah, I think that's what everybody wants to know, right? Like, what can we do? This is a complex issue, and it goes way beyond just the numbers. We're talking about, like, deep cultural undercurrents and societal expectations and economic conditions.
Yeah.
All these pieces, they kind of weave this tapestry of despair, in a way, shaping this heartbreaking trend that we see.
So we've got this map, and it visualizes the data. It's really interesting. It's like almost like a heat map, The hotter the color, the bigger the gap.
Right.
And it's alarming to see just how intense that gender gap is in certain regions.
Yeah.
Places like Eastern Europe and Russia, for example.
Yeah.
When you compare that to regions like Latin America or Africa, the difference is just striking.
Right. And I think that geographic variation really tells us a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of screaming that there's more to this story than we might initially think.
Right.
It suggests that these invisible forces, cultural factors and socioeconomic conditions, that these things are really playing a huge role in shaping these trends.
Okay, let's talk about Eastern Europe and Russia.
Sure.
It's hard to ignore just how intense the gender gap is there. What's going on in those regions?
Well, there's a lot going on, and it's really multi-layered.
Okay.
One of the key factors is the high rate of alcoholism among men.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And that's a known risk factor for depression. And, of course, suicide as well. And then you have the cultural piece of the puzzle. There's this really strong expectation of stoicism, being the strong, silent type.
Yeah.
And that can really create this environment where men feel like they can't talk about their struggle.
Bottling everything up.
Exactly. And seeking help is seen as a sign of weakness, so they don't do that either.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, you have the economic upheaval that followed the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Right.
A lot of men lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And in that region, there's this really deeply entrenched idea that a man's worth is tied to his ability to provide.
Being the breadwinner.
Exactly. So when they lose their jobs, they lose their sense of identity. They feel like failure.
It's like this vicious cycle.
It really is.
So then, moving westward, we see Western Europe and North America.
Yeah.
It's a slightly different story there, isn't it?
It is.
What are we seeing?
The gender gap's still there.
Okay.
But it's generally not as extreme as what we see in Eastern Europe.
Okay.
And that might be because these regions tend to have better mental health resources available.
Right.
However, there's still a lot of stigma around men's mental health.
Yeah.
So that's still a big hurdle. And it's really interesting to consider the cultural shifts that are happening around gender roles, too.
Okay.
Because these changes, they can create a sense of unease, almost like a pressure cooker for some men who are trying to figure out where traditional masculinity fits into this evolving landscape.
The world's changing.
It is.
And some people are having trouble adapting.
Exactly.
Now, Latin America and Africa present this really fascinating contrast.
They do.
The gender gap is smaller there.
Why do you think that is?
It's a great question, and there are a couple of theories. One idea is that it has to do with the strong family and community support systems that are often found in these cultures.
Okay.
It's like a safety net. It helps to protect people from suicidal thoughts,
Yeah.
and there might also be different expressions of masculinity at play, too.
Oh, interesting. Potentially allowing for more emotional vulnerability.
Okay.
However, we also have to acknowledge that there's a possibility of underreported data in some regions.
Right.
So more research is definitely needed to really understand what's happening in these areas.
So we've seen all these regional variations,
Yeah.
but there must be some things that connect this global phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
What are the commonalities? What are we seeing across the board?
Well, there are several universal factors that stand out.
Okay.
First, the methods that men choose tend to be more lethal,
Okay.
and that results in higher completion rates, unfortunately,
Right.
while women are more likely to choose methods that allow for intervention.
So it seems like there's a difference in the level of finality
Exactly.
in the decision-making process.
Yes, exactly.
This reminds me of a friend I had who struggled with depression for years,
Mm-hmm.
and he could never talk about it.
Yeah.
It was impossible for him.
Right.
He just bottled everything up inside.
And that's such a common story.
Yeah.
And it ties into another really critical factor,
Okay.
help-seeking behavior.
Okay.
Women are generally much more likely to reach out for professional help,
Yeah.
share their struggles, recognize the signs of depression.
All right.
They also tend to have broader, stronger emotional support networks.
Yeah.
Men, on the other hand, often isolate themselves,
Right.
especially after big life changes like job loss or relationship breakdowns.
Like that strong and silent facade, it
Yes.
really keeps them from connecting with others
It does.
and from getting the help that they need.
Exactly. And then there's also the economic piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Those traditional provider roles, that expectation that men have to be the breadwinner,
Yeah.
it can put immense pressure on them.
Yeah.
And when there are economic downturns, men are often hit the hardest.
Right.
They lose their jobs, often in male-dominated fields like construction or manufacturing. And this can really intensify feelings of failure and hopelessness, especially if their entire identity is tied to their ability to provide.
Right. So we have all these factors kind of converging.
We do.
Cultural pressures, economic anxieties,
Yeah.
reluctance to seek help.
Right.
It's like this perfect storm.
It is.
So what can we do about it? How can we start turning the tide? How can we support men's mental health?
Well, there's always hope. We need to start shifting the way we think and the way we act. And one of the first things we need to do is develop mental health approaches that are tailored specifically for men.
Okay.
We need outreach programs that are designed to meet men where they are.
Right.
Services that understand their unique needs and challenges, not
Yeah.
just a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah.
And culturally, we have got to dismantle that strong and silent stereotype.
Yeah.
We need to promote healthier models of masculinity.
Right.
Teach boys from a young age that it's okay to express their emotions, that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
It's about redefining what it means to be a man.
Exactly.
And we can't forget about economic safety nets,
Absolutely.
career transition support,
Yes.
financial counseling, robust social safety nets.
All those things.
All of those are crucial.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot today. We've talked about those stark global statistics and the cultural and economic forces that are at play.
We have.
And it's clear that tackling this gender gap in suicide rates is going to require a really multifaceted approach,
Absolutely.
a collective effort to really rewrite the narrative.
I think as you reflect on this, it's important to consider those societal expectations surrounding men in your own communities.
Yeah.
How might those expectations be impacting their well-being?
Right.
What steps, even small ones, can you take to foster more open conversations? Offer support. Remember, even a small act of kindness can be a beacon of hope for someone who's struggling in silence.
That's a powerful message. And you know what? We want to hear your thoughts on this too. Share your experiences, your ideas, anything that's resonating with you. Let's keep this conversation going because silence is definitely not the answer.
Absolutely.
And that's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.